Okay, Chair, ready when you are.
And we're anticipating one more member to join us shortly. Very good. All right, let's call this meeting to order. Can I have the roll call, please?
Committee Member Carlton. Committee Member Chasty. Oh, could you, would it be possible to do a vocal present?
My bad, I didn't realize I was muted. I'm here.
Okay. Committee Member Green.
Here.
Committee Member Hanson Romero. Oh, you're muted as well.
Sorry, here.
Committee Member Petrilli.
Present.
Committee Member Smullins.
Here.
And Chair Abbott.
Here, and I'm thinking I wish I had licensed the word muted because I think I could have made a lot of money the last year. All right, first order of business is approval of the minutes. Have folks had a chance to review the minutes? Get a motion to approve that.
I move to approve the minutes of last meeting.
All right, thank you.
I second the motion.
Great, all in favor? Oh, we have to go around roll call. Very good.
Committee Member Carlton.
Approved.
Committee Member Chasty.
Aye.
Committee Member Green.
Approved.
Committee Member Hanson Romero.
Aye.
Committee Member Petrilli.
Aye.
Committee Member Smullins.
Aye.
Chair Abbott.
Yes, I approve. Very good. All right, now I kind of feel like everybody's here. Welcome everybody, thanks for tuning in today. Our first item then is the public comment. So this is an opportunity for folks in the public who have something to talk about that's not on the agenda. If it is on the agenda, please wait for that item, but otherwise, please take this opportunity and let us know what's on your mind.
Seeing no hands raised.
Not seeing any hands. Very good. All right. Announcements. Staff, do you have any announcements you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I have 3 announcements. We have, so 505 San Pablo Avenue, we had the Albany Goodwill location close along with 7 other locations in the greater East Bay. At 540 San Pablo Avenue, there's a new development proposal where the Albany Bowl used to be, and there was a study session on March 24 at the Planning and Zoning Commission study session, and that provided an overview on the project. So if you wanted to know more about the project, I would recommend viewing that. And then there, we have an update, basically the outdoor dining in Albany on March 1st, 2021. The council adopted requirements to refine outdoor dining in street installation guidelines on San Pablo, on Solano Avenue, apologies. And you can, if you have any questions, you can email the Community Development Department at com-dev@albanyca.org.
All right, thank you. Committee members, any announcements? I would just like to mention that this Saturday at 10:45, 11, they want it before 11, we're going to be, the Chamber of Commerce, we have a little ribbon cutting for the new Berkeley Humane Thrift Store. So it's you know, it's really just a photo op, but it's kind of fun. And one nice thing about that is they're going to have their mobile adoption truck van there. So that's always going to be doing that every Saturday. So it's pretty neat. Anyway, so I'd love to see you there. Anybody who's within the sound of my voice. Very good. Seeing no other announcements. Time for our items 5, presentations. Quarterly report on sales tax and business activity. I think we have a report on that.
Sorry, just one moment. I just need to promote. It will be presented by Heather Rowden, and I just need to. Having some issues with this.
Brandon, I just promoted her.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
There we go. All right, so a presentation on sales tax collections. So this is the third quarter of 2020, which seems a little outdated, but the way that sales taxes are reported is that the returns are due the month following the end of a quarter. And then our sales tax consultant needs time to organize all of the data and report on it. So I think we should be getting a report soon on fourth quarter and of 2020, and first quarter of 2021 just ended. So returns aren't even due yet. So the information may seem like it's a little outdated, especially with COVID and everything going on, but it is still important to see, how COVID did impact, that full year, the 6 months from the year before to the end of third quarter 2020. So you should have all received in your packet the information, but let me go ahead and share some of that, and we'll just go over, the highlights of what we're looking at. So you'll see they show a graph of the last few years and the sales tax collections for some categories of businesses. And we had been doing really well, and our sales tax was growing year over year. And then you see, because of COVID, the big drop off here. You'll note that the county pool increased slightly from last year. That has to do with a couple of items. One is the increase in online sales, people purchasing things online and having them delivered to their house. Another thing that affects this number is there was a Supreme Court decision last year or the year before called Wayfair. And that decision changed how businesses have to tax a sale based on where it was made or where it's delivered. And there were winners and losers in that, and luckily Albany was a winner. And so some of the increase that you see in that lower county pool number is based on that court decision. It would really be impossible for us to unwind what portion of that increase is due to COVID and people ordering things online, and what portion of it is due to the change in the law. So, we're just going to have to wait a couple years and see how that evens out before we can really see how much COVID impacted online sales versus how much that lawsuit impacted us. But you'll see that really the big hit is in our food products, which includes restaurants. So this is, so we did have, let's see, what else does this report show? A lot of numbers. This goes into how Albany is doing compared to the rest of the state, which is also summarized, bear with me while I scroll up. It's also summarized here at the top, where it shows you the difference between Albany, Alameda, the San Francisco Bay generally, and statewide. Generally, Albany recovers quickly. That was also shown when property values went down during the housing bubble. Albany's property tax values recovered much quicker than the surrounding area. And, we're showing that same resiliency with our sales tax. A lot of Albany's residents are, white collar workers, and we had good job retention during the pandemic. And so we didn't see as drastic a drop as a lot of people did, and we see a recovery. The length of time that it's going to take to recover to pre-COVID levels is still unclear. If you go off of the expected unemployment and the expected employment bounce back, you're looking at 5 to 10 years. Whereas people that are looking specifically at, the economy, they're looking at it recovering in, 2 years, depending on who you talk to. So when we budget, we're really taking a conservative approach to that recovery and kind of hitting it somewhere in the middle where we don't anticipate receiving as much sales tax as we received before for probably 5 to 7 years. So other than that, I don't really have anything else unless there are questions.
Okay, thank you. So are there any specific questions? I see one hand up. Committee Member Chasty.
Yeah, I'd be curious, what was the crux of the legal decision that changed the allocations? What was the reasoning?
The reasoning behind, well, that is, so the original decision that set where nexus, that's what they call where you tax something, was the Quill decision, which happened a long time ago and was based on mail orders. And the Supreme Court at the time basically said, if you don't have nexus in the state, so you don't step into a state, that state can't tax you. Because all of a sudden when mail order companies were, coming around, states were like, hey, you're shipping stuff in, we want sales tax revenue on that. And the Supreme Court said, nope, you can't touch them. Well, now that we have the whole online boom and we're, catching up with technology, the question was brought to the Supreme Court again, and they basically created what is considered economic nexus. And so there's thresholds that states will put in, Amazon, Walmart online, Etsy, those big, especially marketplace sellers, they are now required to collect at point of delivery versus what they used to collect at warehouse places. So that's really what the crux of the decision was we now have this economic nexus, and they said it doesn't matter if you don't have a physical presence in that jurisdiction, you have to collect their tax.
So this is basically the effort by, say, for example, the state of California and the Franchise Tax Board to collect from people who order online, order their supplies through Amazon, and are buying from sites outside of the state of California, especially on the Amazon platform, and not paying sales tax. Is that the decision you're talking about?
Correct. I would like to clarify, technically you have always owed that tax. It was just supposed to be reported as use tax. Nobody really knows about that or actually reports it. So yes, states are trying to get the sales tax at the point of sale versus having people report what they owe after the fact.
Yeah, so basically it's a billing function that if you make an order from your billing address on your credit card, that billing address is the place where the sales tax will be levied.
It's the delivery address, not the billing address. But
okay.
In most cases, yes, businesses push back a lot on this because there's thousands of taxing jurisdictions in the United States. When you think about states, counties, and local jurisdictions. So that's really why, to hit that balance, they came up with the threshold. I think California's threshold is $500,000. If you do more than $500,000 in the state of California, you have to start collecting taxes. But I would have to follow up if you really want.
Well, the effort to collect those taxes predates COVID, though. So is there a new decision? Yeah. Is there a new decision that came out just this last year?
No, the decision came out a couple years ago, but states had to make all of the policies and procedures. And then obviously the businesses were like, okay, well, you need to give us time to implement it. So the effects of the decision didn't actually go into force until, I think it might have been January of last year.
So this is then the result of, we get a minor tax bump because many of our residents are using these online services and doing basically online purchasing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee before we open it for public comment? Seeing no questions, we can open this for public comment. Anybody tuning in who'd like to add something to this or ask a question? And seeing none of that either.
Is there any way,
so-
Todd, is there any way
Okay.
for us to know if we have public watching and who's watching and
Yes.
who's with us?
Depending on your device, it is possible to see a list of who's tuning in. Are you on a laptop or a desktop or a mobile
Yeah, I'm
device?
on a laptop, hold on.
So if you scroll down to the bottom of the window, you'll see a participants button. If you may have to mouse over before you see it.
Yeah,
And
no,
if you
I've
click
got that.
yeah, then you can pop up a list and you can see all the panelists, and then there's another tab that will see attendees.
I don't see a list of attendees, that's the thing.
Well, there's two tabs. One,
Oh, I see it, I've got it.
great.
Yeah, so it's Alan Kane, Jeff Bond, and Nick Pilch. Hi,
Yeah, now
Alan,
we've
hi, Jeff, hi,
accepted-
Nick.
Yes.
They can't speak to me, right? I can only say something to them.
We now know people who have a problem with their social lives. Okay, so I know them all. It's okay. Any? You're not looking for anything from us. We're just
Todd, you're cutting out, I can't hear you.
in addition to generating income for the communities. It also kind of removes a little bit of that advantage that online retailers have over our local retailers. You know, you technically have owed tax, but it's not in the price. People don't see it. So it's also a move to try to level the playing field just a little bit for, you know, Five Little Monkeys versus Amazon, for instance. All right. I think we're done with this item. Moving on. San Pablo specific plan and outreach. I believe Jeff is going to have a little presentation. And thank you, Heather. Thank you so much. Sorry, should have said that earlier.
There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Jeff Baum, the Community Development Director. I know you have a lot on your agenda, so I'm going to move pretty quickly through summarize for you two recent presentations that went to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I think combine these two presentations, and the discussion took 2 or 3 hours. So I apologize if this is kind of a real quick run through, but what I'd like to do is give you an overview of what's going on so far, and a preview of what to expect in the next 6 months or so, I guess. I'm going to share my screen for a moment here. There we go. So first of all, this is the study area of the San Pablo specific plan. And just to kind of get you oriented, north is to the left, El Cerrito is to the left, and Berkeley is to the right of the screen. And we're basically looking at the core, obviously the corridor of San Pablo Avenue to Keynes and Adams, and through the first block of University Village. Oops. Let's see here. There we go. The time frame here. Let me go to full screen for a second. This will be a little better. The time frame. We're really right in the middle of the process. There have been 3 study sessions beginning last summer with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then we had a community engagement forum, which I'll give you a few more details about in a second. And we're now at the point where our consultants are preparing a draft plan based on the feedback that we've received from the public and from the commission last year. And that will be rolling out in the next couple of months. Associated with that is a infrastructure plan to evaluate the capacity, the city's infrastructure capacity, and then a environmental review in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. And I should say that a specific plan is it's kind of planning lingo. It's basically a package of procedural changes to the city zoning code and perhaps our capital improvement plan and perhaps the city's general plan. And cities often do this when we're focused on a particular area or a particular issue. It's a way to package a lot of different things into one planning process. As shown on the screen, there's the big question is, how do we balance residential and commercial development in this area? We're going through a huge transition in the San Francisco Bay Area, California, and the country regarding housing and the need for developing new housing, as well as dramatic changes in the commercial retail business. So what we're trying to do here is figure out the zoning for the future. We have zoning that's been in place more or less for decades. It's not the answer for the future, and so hopefully this process will lead to lay the groundwork for future vitality of San Pablo Avenue. A few of the things just to mention that, and I'm not going to try to read every one of these slides, but right now our zoning requirements basically require ground floor commercial, and whether or not there's a good market demand for that. And when planning and zoning standards start to push against market reality, usually nothing happens, or we end up creating spaces that are really not very viable and can become vacant or underutilized. The other thing I wanted to mention about this is, well, this slide kind of says the same thing now that I look at it. Sorry about that. One of the sub-consultants that was involved with this process made a rather lengthy presentation to the commission in September of 2020, September 23rd. And I encourage you, if you're really interested in this stuff, to listen to her part of the presentation. Her name is Christine Fristenberg. I'm going to show you just a couple of her slides and some of the points that she was making. The first is that when you mix commercial and residential uses in the same building, it really gets difficult. It gets challenging to make it work for everybody. The exiting requirements, the service requirements, the visibility, these two uses are sometimes kind of competing for one another. And so sometimes you'll often see, actually not sometimes, you often see mixed-use developments with vacant or underutilized ground floor space. That's because it really wasn't designed to be successful retail. It was designed to be a successful residential project, and the retail was just kind of tacked in because the city required it. So she had some good recommendations about that. She showed some examples of how different spaces can compete. The ground floor spaces can compete with one another. And, one of the takeaways that she talked about was, for example, ceiling heights. To really be a good, effective retail space or restaurant space or commercial service space, 20-foot ceiling heights are really desirable. That gives room for ventilation systems and lighting systems and mechanical systems that often go with retail that just don't fit very well in floor heights that are lower than that for the ground floor. The other thing she mentions, the importance of corner locations for retail tenants. And it's also important for some of the residential uses as well. So that's really where if we're going to require building retail, we want to make sure it's prosperous and make sure that there's an opportunity for retail on corners, and maybe not require mid-block retail where it's likely not to be successful. The other point she makes is that the spaces that we end up with in some of these mixed-use buildings can be really too small to be viable. A lot of the really successful restaurants and businesses, they need more than a couple thousand square feet to be viable. And by viable, I mean paying enough rent to cover the cost of construction. So that's again something to consider as we're looking at different size sites. If we're forcing a development of a retail space, is that going to be a successful retail space? And making sure that if we can, through our zoning requirements, make sure that the developer does do something that will be successful. The other point that she makes is that the land use economics has gotten out of whack. And so with the value of housing these days, residential land is very valuable. For a lot of retail uses, the land value just isn't competitive. So basically the residential developers are pricing out the commercial developers when they look on corridors like San Pablo Avenue. In that case, maybe we do need to use our regulations to say this has to be commercial, and to think about where exactly we want that kind of requirement to be applied. Next, I want to shift gears a little bit to talk about the engagement process. And it's pretty interesting, actually. So living in the era of a pandemic, we had to do virtual engagement, of course. And so beginning in late November, I think it was around Thanksgiving, we set up a web page with a virtual open house. And as you can see in some of these analytics, we got a very strong response. We were pleasantly surprised by this. 443 visitors, 72 people contributed. People spent 80 hours or more online on the site, and people used a variety of computers, both desktops and their phones or tablets. And frankly, I think this got more engagement than we would ever get in the good old days of crowding a bunch of people into the city council chambers. I don't think we would be able to get 72 people in there very comfortably, and certainly not be able to give them the kind of opportunity to comment, the time and space to comment as well as people did in this case. So at the Commission's March 10th, 2021 meeting, Ann Hirsch made a detailed presentation about some of the feedback. Ann is taking the day off, or she would be doing this presentation actually. But I would encourage, again, if you're interested in the details of what people presented, I'd encourage you to go to that. Again, that was the March 10th, just last month. These are just a couple of slides from that. We heard from people, both sides of the issues, about whether there should be more or less development, or how it should change. I'm not going to read all these, but just to make the point that there are some opinions across the spectrum. One of the big issues that we struggle with in land use along San Pablo Avenue is what is the allowed height the city should allow. And this graphic that you see is a kind of a representation of allowed heights along San Pablo Avenue, running from Oakland on the right-hand side of the screen at downtown Oakland at 120 feet, through Emeryville, through Berkeley to Albany, where our height limit is 38 feet, and then back up to El Cerrito, which is at 65 feet, but allowed to go up higher with some of their local requirements. So as you can see, we're kind of artificially pushing down on building heights here in Albany through our zoning code. And as a result, we're getting less development because of that. As part of the public engagement, we asked this question about what people thought would be the appropriate height. And as you can see in the comment boxes there, 40% are happy with the height as they are, and 60% would be okay with higher building heights. Getting towards the end here, so bear with me. One of the other questions that I think would be interesting to the committee, related to commercial in particular, is how people feel about ground floor retail. And as you can see, 39% of people would be okay with non-commercial uses on the ground floor along San Pablo Avenue. Although most people would like to have an option for both. So some of the questions that been posed to us that the consultants are preparing a draft to address are on this slide. And they're kind of making the same points again, looking at how do we deal with ground floor commercial development? Where do we want it? And how do we do this in a way that is going to be successful and ensure that if we're not if it's not going to be successful, don't build it. And to also think about with point 4 here, think about, is there some place where we really need to preserve it as commercial only? A few other questions and ideas that are being kicked around. Again, whether we're preserving some areas for commercial use, the types of ground floors, and then looking at our design guidelines. There are lots of changes to state laws these days that are affecting what we do in the planning and building world. And one of them is we have to have much more objective standards when we tell someone, hey, we like your building or we don't like your building. It used to be the commission could be pretty subjective about it, and they can just say, well, I just don't like it. It's the wrong feeling or something like that. Now we have to be able to articulate that, and it needs to be kind of a check the box process. So this plan will come up with those objective guidelines for us to use. The other thing I just wanted to mention in passing, this is a big issue, and it's more than just this study session, but the issues of social justice and racial justice are something we're struggling with, and we have to struggle with it in both this community and across the country. And we're trying to talk about that openly. So in particular, Albany is a place where it can be hard for people with low and moderate income to find some place to live. So we want to do everything we can to provide an opportunity for that to occur. The state actually has quite a few laws in place now that require us to do this. And we think it's good that they have those laws, and we're looking forward to using this process to help lay the groundwork for that. Mentioned a couple times, we're drafting the plan now. We'll be looking at the infrastructure as well and the environmental impacts, and hope to have this wrapped up in the next 6 months or so. And it's going to lead really into the next big planning process that we have in Albany, which is the preparation of a housing element, which is an element of our specific plan, which is a state mandate that we have to prepare to accommodate a plan to be able to demonstrate the ability to accommodate over 1,100 units of housing in Albany in the next 8 years. And so San Pablo Avenue is one of the places where we think we can put a lot of that housing. That will be a very challenging process for all sorts of different reasons. That's probably another agenda item for another day, but this plan kind of sets the groundwork for a successful housing element, I think. So I'm going to pause there. I'm sorry to go through a lot of stuff real quickly. We do have a great webpage. If you're interested in it, just put San Pablo specific plan into Google and you'll get a link to it. And the presentations and links to the Planning Commission, staff reports, and so forth are all there. So I'm going to stop talking and hopefully be able to answer your questions.
All right, thanks, Jeff. And I would mention that as part of the agenda packet, there is a page that just has a few links, and I'm sure some of these links are there. All right, are there any kind of clarifying questions or questions from the committee on this? I guess I'm not seeing a hand. I think committee member Chasty is. I'm seeing two hands then from member Petrelli and member Chasty. Member Chasty, would you like to proceed?
I'll go second.
All right. Oh, all right. Member Petrelli, would you like to make
Yeah,
your question?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate the presentation. To how this committee can do to support you over the in the near and long-term future. Or if there's anything that you need from us, recommendations or otherwise.
You were cutting in and out, at least on my end, you were cutting in and out a little bit. So I think I heard a question about what kind of support or engagement we could get from the committee. Is that what I heard?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, great. So I think, ultimately we would like to bring the draft plan to you, and that will probably be in a few months for your more detailed comments, and have you make a recommendation to the city council about that plan. That I think as a group is the most important thing for each of you individually. If there are things you like or don't like about this and that I touched on, or even some of the things that I had to kind of skip over, I would encourage you to participate in the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. Those are where our consultants are paying attention, and will be able to respond in more detail and be able to kind of process what they're hearing from you and from others. And also gives the Planning Commission a chance to hear your comments and kind of process themselves as a group in the work that they're doing, essentially being guided by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I think those are the two best things to do. If you have anything you wanted to just jot down an email or something and send it to me and to Ann Hirsch, that's also great, and we'll make sure that that gets on to the Planning and Zoning Commission the next time they talk about this.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thank you. I think the part you didn't hear, Jeff, was him thanking you profusely for your presentation. So.
Oh, you're welcome.
And now I think we have a question from Member Chasty.
I have a comment. First off, I think it's great that there's going to be a change about how the process is evaluated and how applications are evaluated. One of the despondent features of the way that planning and zoning was handled in the city of Albany was this very much kangaroo court feeling when you went in with an application, because the planning commission could say, we don't like what you're doing, you ought to change it. If I had my druthers, you could do this, but you can't do that, or come back next week with a new idea because we don't like the way you're going. And it's very, very discouraging to whichever applicants, whether you're a good applicant or a crappy applicant, to not know what the rules are. The rules should be clear, and it shouldn't be up to the discretion of somebody who decides he or she doesn't like the look of your place. It should be rules. So I think that's great, and I think it makes people respect the process a lot more when they know. You should know going in whether you're the least popular person on your block or the most popular person on your block, whether your application will be approved or turned down. 90% sure one way or the other, and there should be much less discretion. I think that's wonderful. Second thing is, I think people are ready for taller buildings along San Pablo, and I think that will help a lot with the issue of if we have to add more population to Albany. Third thing is, I'm not sure that the commercial spaces on San Pablo are failing because of COVID or because of large shifts in the way we do shopping. There is a percentage of that, and you'll see that happening on Solano as well. So there is some of that. But even without that, there seemed to be a cookie cutter style look to the commercial spaces that on the ground floor that didn't lend to the kind of window shopping and casual pedestrian walking and bicycle cruising that makes the street interesting. So there may be something else to the design features that we need to think about that's more of an architectural problem and less of a mandated commercial space problem. I'm not opposing the idea of mandating commercial space. I think it's a good idea. We should protect the idea of having commercial spaces. But there's something about the construction that is a bit off-putting. It's not that it's not workable in some way, but it doesn't draw you to the space. So that just two comments.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, Member Smolin?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm just wondering, did the consultant talk about the types of businesses that tend to work as commercial over residential, residential, or did she just talk about more corner spaces type, tend to work? I mean, there's probably certain types of spaces that people will walk down, go downstairs from their own building and go to. Is there something like that?
Yeah, I'm not recalling anything specific about that. I'm sorry, I don't. She may have. It was I think most of her emphasis was on kind of making sure the physical space would work for a variety of different things and then sort of let the market decide. So I don't remember her making a particular recommendation one way or the other. And if my memory is failing me, I apologize in advance.
Thanks.
All right, Member Hanson Romero.
I just want to say, you know, and I think I've mentioned this before, in other types of buildings where we've had, for example, one in Oakland, there were some listings that they ended up taking the commercial space and putting them into residential because they just could not fill the commercial space for years. And so they redeveloped the spaces into additional living spaces and they sold just like that. So that commercial usage on the bottom floor, I've seen so many times before, it doesn't really work. But I'd also like to find out about kind of moving forward through this plan. Are you guys also going to be, you know, kind of monitoring, or I don't know, I guess my point is we've seen some buildings get picked up on San Pablo and just not taken care of. One was the Casper's site and it's just full of graffiti. And so I guess I'm trying to say, is there some sort of a maintenance plan or coming back and monitoring these new owners who are developing and helping them maintain, or understanding that they have to kind of have a desirable look and not look like crap?
I can respond briefly to that if you wish. That's more of a code enforcement problem rather than a planning commission approval problem. And we're not very good at code enforcement right now in the city of Albany. We don't have the staff capacity to do the lower level kinds of violations. Our focus when we can is on life safety matters primarily. So while we can put maintenance standards in zoning codes, and they're already there actually, the challenge is the time and energy that it takes to get people who otherwise are landlords that just don't care, to actually get them to get their wallet out and pay somebody to go and take care of their property for them. And that usually requires us taking, or at least us moving towards some legal action before they do that. And that just takes a lot of time and energy.
Well, because that also will affect the desirability of any other businesses coming in. If they're looking at this going, well, I'm not going to put my place in here, so it's going to affect new business as well. So
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I believe Member Carlton, you still have a question you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I had a couple of comments, questions, I guess. One, I totally agree with what committee member Shisti was saying about the commercial attractiveness of some of those buildings on San Pablo. I lived here for a few years and I would walk by and I'm like, really? It's like, it didn't even really occur to me it was a business. There's nothing that visually would draw you into it at all. So, you know, I don't know what you do about that, but it would behoove some research if possible. And then also to what committee member Hanson Romero said about if there's some ability to move from commercial, like if there is a mandate that the bottom floor has to be commercial, it seems to me that's kind of shooting yourself in the foot, that there should be some ability that if it's never going to rent for commercial, we should be able to transition that to residential that is going to rent, because it doesn't help anybody to have vacant spaces. And then my third comment was about parking. Is there some sort of mandate for the residential places that are going in that there has to be X number of parking spaces? There's just not that much along San Pablo, and the side streets are not, they don't have a lot of spare room either.
Yeah, that's a question that usually comes up with respect to parking. That usually comes up earlier than it has in this conversation. People are very interested in that. Lots of different opinions. The way it's working right now in kind of combining state law and city standards, the way most applications come to us, basically the developer has a lot of flexibility to request whatever parking that they need, to boil it down to the basics. We do have standards. It's basically 1 space per unit, although that can be reduced by the Planning and Zoning Commission and has been in a number of cases. In fact, just recently a project was approved for 14 units on Evelyn that didn't have any parking.
What?
In other cases, there's, developers will look at this and say, I'm, trying to attract people who are likely to have more than 1 car, so they want to have more than the city required parking spaces. And overlaying that is other things that we're trying to achieve in a policy sense of encouraging active transportation, reducing greenhouse gases, those kinds of things. So it's a very complicated discussion. And some of it, frankly, is about, we don't want to turn this into a parking plan. What we're really trying to do with this study is figure out how to get more housing in Albany and not let the parking question kind of be the tail that wags the dog. We're trying to figure out what the zoning standards are for building more housing. And then if we need to study parking issues in Albany, which we did 5 years ago, we can do that again. But we're trying to resist the temptation to just make this all about parking. Sorry, that's a long answer to your question, but I think it was a really good one to bring up.
No, and I just would comment that I completely agree with that. And one of the things I do love about Albany is that I rarely touch my car. I commute into the city, I take public transit, I walk, I can ride a bike. And that to me is one of the things that is very attractive about Albany. So maybe then if parking isn't, mandated along with the building, then maybe it's the spin to make sure that people know, like, the spin is like, how walkable is Albany? You don't need a car here.
Okay, any other questions? We'll open up for public comment in a minute. I just had a quick question, and this rate, what jogged my thought of it was this discussion of parking, and that to what degree is this process taking into account the plans for the San Pablo Avenue corridor, which could result in a dramatic loss of parking?
So what Chair Abbott is referring to, I think, is some planning that's going on countywide. Actually, it's the Alameda County Transportation Commission is looking at San Pablo from Oakland all the way up, well, actually beyond even the county border. But their focus right now is from Oakland to Albany. And they initially started this planning a couple of years ago. They came up with some very creative ideas that were very dramatic about bus services and bicycle lanes and along the corridor. That study has never really been completed. What they learned and what they heard from different cities, they got different answers from different cities. And there was no grand consensus that came out of that planning process, which sometimes happens. So their focus is kind of morphing right now to doing some more short-term things that just make some improvements to bus service and to pedestrian safety and to bicycle safety, but without really, at this point at least, not getting to that big question of, do we take out street parking to put in a transit facility or take out street parking to put in a bicycle facility, and have that go all the way up into Contra Costa County. And I don't think they're going to come to a conclusion on that anytime soon.
All right, thanks for the update. Member Chasty has another question.
Yeah, I think I have a solution for the Casper problem and for enforcement. I think you ought to put a bounty out and let the Blue Glove Parade make some money.
I'll try anything.
We do pick up the trash in front. We do that. All right, not seeing any further questions from the committee. I know somebody in the audience has had their hand up, at least their virtual hand up for a long time. So who would like to speak?
Nick Filch.
Hi, thank you, committee. Appreciate the chance to get in some comments here. And if you'll forgive me, I hope I don't go too long, but there's a lot to unpack here. Just in terms of the parking, one thing all that is if you have a lot more people in dense housing on the corridor, those people will be good for businesses, and I would expect them to be able to walk to a lot of businesses and bike to a lot of businesses on San Pablo and Solano. Members had a lot of good comments. Please do engage with this process. Would really like you to. There was a good comment about design review, about the kangaroo court. It's true. A lot of people are faulting design review for the ability to bring arbitrary considerations into your project. So I think that's a good comment. I went to a conference. I went to the California CalEd conference, which stands for California Association of Local Economic Development. It's a 3-day conference 2 or 3 years ago. And what they said about local development was that small retail is struggling and will continue to struggle. What economic development means to cities is housing and service-related businesses. So that means things like restaurants and other service-related businesses. So that's, as much as we love our small retail and want to preserve it, you need to keep that in mind. And speaking of CalEd and other organizations, CalEd is an organization that we belong to, as well as we belong to East Bay EDA, and we should be engaging both of those organizations for their opinions about what we should do with the retail. They've got people who will give us advice for free and or for a fee, so we should be going to them as well. Do watch all the planning and zoning meetings yourself. I would urge you at least to watch the one in full where the consultant speaks about the economic development. I think that Jeff was good at bringing up most of the points that she brought up. But I would say another thing that was brought up was that do you designate certain blocks for only business in order to fix this problem of the businesses not being a big enough size? Another thing that was spoken was mixed use project, or not mixed use, but rather convertible spaces, so that you could decide later whether you have housing or business on the ground floor, but the space could be converted to either or. Also, live workspaces were discussed. By the way, wasn't on P&Z when those things were discussed. I am on P&Z now, but I am speaking for myself in all this. And finally, I would just say, and I'm just going to go a few seconds over if you don't mind. The housing element is another big thing that's happening. So there's a lot of wonky stuff happening, and the San Pablo specific plan is going to feed into the housing element, because the housing element is going to say that we need to build a whole lot more housing in Albany, and the San Pablo is a natural place to do that. So all of these things are related and tied together, and they're very much worth everyone's input and engagement. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe I see another hand up, Veronica Davidson.
Hey guys, this is an awesome conversation. Loving it. So I just wanted to weigh in a little bit, being a business owner on San Pablo, and some of the challenges and strengths that we've seen in our business. A couple of those things are, the interface with the street. I'm so glad that was brought up. That's been hugely important for us drawing people in, is when people are coming by whatever mode of transportation, seeing it and being engaged with our space. So that really helps us draw customers in. And I've talked to other business owners along the way about that same thing. The other thing is, I would really wonder how we kind of approach, from an economic development standpoint, which types of retail businesses go in. So we're losing the bowling alley, and we don't have a lot of businesses that offer other things than just a quick retail service. And I think St. Pablo is a great area for us to include more of those businesses. So just thinking a little outside the box, and also the live work, there's a ton of people artists, and they're losing other spaces. So if Albany created those and offered those, it would be really amazing and draw a different clientele that we could use in Albany. So that's just my 2 cents.
All right. Seeing no more public comment, we can bring it back to the commission. I thank you, public. Any further discussion? Again, I don't think they're really looking for anything from us tonight. This is we're receiving this information. I would just take the opportunity to kind of agree with I think actually Member Chasty, Member Carlton, and about the troubles we've seen with the planning process, the approval process plan, and opening that up so that it's a little more objective. Now, the question I had was that the specific plan, identifies that corridor. Would these sorts of changes apply citywide, or is it really only going to be development on San Pablo that's going to have the checkbox sort of approval process?
For this specific plan is just for San Pablo Avenue. Under state law, any multifamily housing development now is going to use these objective guidelines that we're setting up, but there'll still be the more subjective process for single family homes, which is kind of our bread and butter. We do a lot of those every month. And that process will remain the same, which is, for better or worse, much more subjective.
All right, thank you. The other comment I wanted to make was that in some ways, this is the best of times for this, and in some ways it's the worst of times. We don't really know how things are going to change permanently after the pandemic or long term. And so it might be difficult to make high quality judgments or 2020 vision, or hindsight in 20 years may say that we've made some horrible decisions, but people working closer to home, perhaps an opportunity for shared workspace, things like that, or even just office space. We don't have a whole lot of office space, but there might be need for that if people aren't willing to commute so much anymore. So interesting challenge we have. And I heard that a draft will be brought back to this committee for formal
Your sound is kind of cutting out again.
in the program. Couldn't hear me? Did I go out? Okay, sorry. Yeah, we'll have a formal role, but I do encourage everybody to become engaged and submit information as they make comments. All right. I think we can. Yes, Amy, or I'm sorry, Member Smullins, another comment. Well, I'm trying to be,
The official and everything. Yeah, I just had a couple of comments because I thought the last section was supposed to be just for questions. But anyway, yeah, it's interesting about the retail on the corners being more successful. We shouldn't create a glut of businesses that aren't going to be successful. There's already vacancy as it is on San Pablo and Solano, and I know that committee member Hanson Romero has mentioned Braxton Group before as a business that basically pinpoints or helps pinpoint, especially in COVID times, we really don't know, pinpoints what a city may need and what a city may be able to use, and maybe be able to help us target something that we need. So at least with commercial that we put in, we'll put in commercial that hopefully we can use and people around here will need. And San Pablo, and then to the other subject, the parking subject, San Pablo Avenue hosts a bunch of AC transit lines and is across the street from El Cerrito, or down the block, depending on what side you're on, from El Cerrito Plaza BART. So everyone doesn't necessarily need a car, but car share can really service multiple families, multiple households. So when you need a car, you can have it to use, but you don't need to own one and store one at your home all the time. Thanks.
Member Chasey, please.
Yeah, I don't mean to speak too often. I'm sorry about that. One thing is, I'm 2,000 years old, so none of you are old enough to remember how this got in and out of balance. But it used to be that communities wanted housing. And so all of these places like Benicia and places that were outside of Albany grew enormously by adding huge housing tracts. And then they discovered that they had no tax base and they had to keep raising the property taxes on these new developments, and people went crazy and Prop 13 came around. Now, that's not the end of the story. The cities have figured out clever ways to get around the limitations of Prop 13 by raising every other specific fund they can. So we're not really, Prop 13 did not kill cities, but losing retail as a source of income might, unless the online traffic makes up for it. So just for us to keep in mind that this balance between retail and commercial will become a more serious problem if we're not able to raise the revenue, because we'll have to continually go back to the citizens and ask for more and more taxes. That becomes okay for a while, but eventually people will, they'll just regurgitate.
A voice from the ages. Thank you. That's very interesting to hear. Any other final comments? All right, we can move on then to the next item. Thank you very much, Jeff. Very, very valuable information.
You're welcome. Thank you for all your comments.
Moving on then, item 6.1, review of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. I think we have a subcommittee report for that.
Yeah, we do. So I forget everyone's committee member name, but committee member Green and Hanson Romero, and now my son Leon, we met once, and I think that we have a small presentation, and we'll do another follow-up. Maybe Ms. Green, if you want to take this for a second, and I'll be right back. Hold on.
So
The joys of working from home.
Very good.
So we actually looked at the wrong documents in our subcommittee meeting. We had a great meeting, but we're referring to the wrong documents. So I think we should put off our excellent presentation until next time.
So I'm curious, in what document did you review?
We reviewed the 2-year plan extensively. We have some great ideas, but it wasn't what we were supposed to be doing. And we just discovered that today, before, after the agenda had gone out. So.
Well, I would be willing to hear a short presentation on your discussion. I don't want it to have gone to waste, and I'm sure it's going to be valuable information. So
well, then I'll let member Michael go ahead.
Very good. Thank you. Michael, I think you're muted there.
Unmute myself. We're good. So really, there's the report, and there's also the economic development plan, both of which have a lot of overlapping things. So basically what we did was we met and we discussed what was existing from both the this is pulled from the report. This is very sort of simple, just carried over. These were ranked from short and low. So the first one was partner with businesses and residents. That was short and low. Then improve city hall's proactive economic development efforts, short, medium. I wish I could present both at the same time, but I won't.
I'm gonna stop you for a moment.
Please.
So this is actually, I think, there's an upcoming agenda item is the work plan.
6.3.
Yeah.
So maybe we can kind of, just to kind of stick with the agenda, maybe we can kind of switch this. So if you don't mind holding on.
No problem. Yeah.
Then we can return to this, because I'm sure it'll be very valuable. I believe we're going to move on then from, do we need to allow public comment on an agenda item that we're kind of postponing? I don't think we're going to have any public comment. All right, so I think on behalf of the committee, I will thank you for your time and look forward to the upcoming presentation. Very good. All right, moving then to 6.2, the business survey. Is there a staff report on this?
No staff report per se, but basically to recap from the last meeting, all of the committee members were going to kind of take a look, think about what would be important questions to ask at this point after we reviewed the the questions in July. Of course, times have changed, and to kind of assist in this process, we provided you with some examples of questions that surveys that were asked by both the federal surveys and then the City of Oakland, just as a reference.
All right, very good. So one of the items in the packet is the survey results. So the survey results include all of the questions from the survey. Is that correct? If we just quickly go down. All right, so I'm just going to quickly read down the previous survey questions, and we can think about that, maybe ask any clarifying questions, and then go through the process. All right. Let's see. First one was, where's your business located? How is your business currently operating in Albany under the shelter-in-place order? This was done, I think, in late spring, early through the summer. Is that right? When this was distributed, shelter-in-place.
I believe so.
Yeah. Let's see. What modifications have you implemented? What modifications do you plan to implement when you are able to operate? How has your business changed the number of employees or employee hours of work for your Albany location during the shelter-in-place order? And then a long list of things that they can indicate what would be helpful as far as let's see, different actions would be helpful. And really that was it. We wanted to keep it short, or they wanted to keep it short, and it was just what, 6 questions? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 6 questions. So clearly things have changed. So what we're doing now is we're kind of considering new questions, removing questions. So any input? I'm trying to think of I wonder if we should take public comment first before we jump into discussion. Any questions before we move into public comment? All right, we'll open for public comment. Not really anticipating any. Okay, now we're free and clear to open up for discussion. So I see Member Green has a hand up.
I mean, I think the questions are mostly still valid, except for the, search and replace overall of, shelter in place with post-COVID, because businesses are starting to open up, and for this to be useful information, you don't want to be like, how are you operating in the yellow zone or whatever zone we're in? I mean, it's just all really like, how are you going to make it post-COVID? I mean, otherwise, I think the questions still stand mostly, maybe some things about parking that we've talked about, maybe ask something about parking, but they're good questions.
Okay, thank you. Member Hanson Romero.
So I think one of the things I'd be maybe interested in is finding out, how many businesses were able to take advantage of the EIDL loans or the PPP loans, kind of find out how many people, if they all took advantage of it, or if maybe more are still hoping to take more advantage of future programs, future funding, something along those lines, maybe.
Okay. Any other comments about this? Member Smullins?
Yeah, I just think that we need to ask more open-ended questions, because those A, B, C, or D can't really get nuances of what people have experienced in this past year, which has been really difficult. And I don't know what we're calling this. Do we call this post-pandemic because it's sort of still pandemic? But like, how do you see your business changing post-pandemic? I'm not sure, again, what the term is, at least in the next year, so we could see what people think, how they're going to have to adjust, and what kind of support do you need from the city post-pandemic, or again, whatever we're calling it, because it's as the pandemic has changed life. So it's still during the pandemic, but it's not post. But I think we need to find out how people's basically businesses have changed, what they need to do what they need to do to survive and what they need the city, what kind of support they need from the city to survive too.
Okay, thank you. Member Green, did you want to, I see Member Carlton has her hand up as well. Do you want to quickly respond? Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think it would be interesting also to know, like, if some business owners are going to keep some of the restrictions in place. Like personally, when I read that movie theaters could open to a capacity of 200 people, I almost had a heart attack. Like, if a movie theater had fewer people, I might be more inclined to go into it. So, and same with retail and restaurants. Like, I know that they have to, I'd be interested to know how they envision balancing like people's fears with the financial realities.
All right, thank you. Member Carlton?
Yeah, actually, that was almost exactly what I was going to say, Committee Member Green, that, kind of like everybody puts some changes in place, and do you intend to go forward with those? And as they are allowed to open up, do you do the big bang? Like, I agree with you with the movie theater. Walking into a theater with 200 people, I'm like, that's not going to happen for me for a while. But if it is open for 50 or 75, I would probably be happy to go in and support and try and keep our businesses afloat. So then I guess as far as the actual survey questions, it would just be nice if they were a little bit more forward thinking. I feel like all these questions are kind of like, what did you do? What have you done? But as you reopen, what do you need? And what did you put in place that you plan to keep that worked? Like, for example, like the parklets. I think a lot of, I like a lot of the restaurants, they put in parklets, and I personally think they're fantastic. And are businesses wanting to keep those? Were those worthwhile? Once they can open up inside, is it worthwhile to keep the outside as well?
Okay, thank you. Member Chase, do you see your hand up?
I'll step behind Member Smallins.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
Oh, no, well, I mean, I had already spoken. No, I mean, that's basically where Member Green and Member Carlton was going, was where I was going, is have it forward looking, like what did you put in place? How have you changed? What are you going to keep? So that's basically the idea is make it open-ended. Like, what do you want to do? Because I know, I agree, some restaurants are going to want to keep outdoor dining because people, I'm old, I don't want to go inside yet. And a lot of their staff doesn't particularly feel comfortable. And frankly, like on, what was the night before I left for Miami, Wednesday night, I went out to dinner on Solano. It was that hot night, and there were just people on Solano eating, and it was really a wonderful atmosphere. So yeah, ask them open-ended what they're going to do. Mr. Chasey.
Okay, thank you. Member Chasey.
So I know that this ship has probably already sailed, and so it might not be worth spending too much time on it, but I'm quite distressed, and I'm not even a bowler, but I'm quite distressed that Albany Bowl, after so many decades in Albany, what, 70 years or 60, has to close. It's an ideal thing to keep open. There's plenty of room, it's good exercise, it's all of the many things that are positive. And is it just that it didn't draw enough participation and patrons? Because it seems to me that there should be a way for a business like that to thrive in a place like Albany. There's kids that will want to learn. There's parents that need to get out with their kids. And then there's geezers like me that probably need to move our bodies and don't. And it would probably be good for us to go to a bowling alley if we could stick our fingers in those stupid things anymore. So, but it's very distressing to me to see a business that should be able to survive all of this go down. And what could we have done, and what should we have done to see if we could help that business weather all of this? I don't know, maybe I should call up Jeff Bond and bend his ear or something.
I'm not sure that's going to be a question on our survey, but I definitely hear what you're saying. And I know that, frankly, I think most people who know him would say if anybody could have kept that business going during a pandemic, it would have been John Tierney. He's a wizard. But he was just completely legally shut down for a year and they couldn't manage it. Well, they were shut down for 6 months and they couldn't. He basically what he needed was a whole lot of money, and that just wasn't coming. That was my understanding. So I did have a couple comments. One thing, a question that I would like to, not quite sure how to word this. I would like to know how many businesses kind of took advantage of the
PPP?
no, the eviction moratorium, so that they couldn't, so they're at risk now of having a year of back rent due. And I want, if they're at risk, there might be something we can do to help them, but we don't know. So I would like to know how many or even who took advantage of that and are at risk. I would like to know anybody who's considering to change the size of their business. Maybe they want to downsize, maybe they want to upsize in response to the changes wrought by the pandemic. And then the city or the org could work as sort of a matchmaker and kind of help them find locations and keep them in Albany, rather than them looking for a larger or smaller place outside of Albany and leaving the city. And then I also, I really like the question on the, I believe it's the Oakland survey, would you like to be contacted? And I kind of see that leading into or leading out from the question that member Hanson-Romero said, were you able to take advantage of government support programs? Would you like to be contacted about available resources, something like that? And then figuring that that wouldn't need to fall on the city, that could be the SAA or the chamber. I mean, that's sort of part of what we do is to connect businesses. So that would be a good thing that we could ask. So I think that's added 3 questions that I'm proposing. And so I kind of think we should take something off, but or change something. Discussion on, people like those questions? Any input? Member Carlton?
Couldn't come off mute. I think that there are some questions like, question 2 right off the bat. How is your business operating in currently under Albany shelter in place orders? I mean, I think that is very, that looked way different in March when this was first asked than it does now. So to me, that question is, almost kind of irrelevant this day and age. This day and age, 6 months later, shall I say? I think the rest again are, still forward. Again, my comment just changing them, like question number 4: what modifications do you plan to implement? I mean, personally, I would change that to if you implemented modifications, do you plan to keep them? Whether that's helpful information or not, I don't know. And then maybe replace question number 5, which is asking if your business has changed the number of employees. That could basically be replaced by the question that you just asked about, are you planning to resize your business?
Okay, I kind of think the employee number is kind of important. So I would want to hold on to, for me, I would suggest we hold on to that one.
There's, I thought there was already another employee one. Oh, my bad. I thought there was already a second one in there.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, no worries.
Just to let you know, we do have a member from the public that has a.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have missed that. Okay, very good. Yeah, we'll open up for public comment then.
Hi, thank you, Nick Page again. Sorry, I'm not sure if I was kind of doing other things while I'm listening. Not sure it's the appropriate time to comment, but I just wanted to comment on the Albany Bowl thing, because I don't think it's Albany's fault that Albany Bowl went away. It's the owner's choice for one thing, and bowling alleys, unfortunately, have been going under all over the place. So cities can step in, but it's a huge risk, and it's potentially very expensive to do so. I know that El Cerrito stepped in with the movie theater, but I think it cost them a lot of money to do so. And now they've had a movie theater that's been closed all this time, which the city has been subsidizing. So very risky thing to do. I know I wish I it would have stayed, but the economics just weren't there. And I think that from what I understand, the owners had been interested in housing for some time, and so they took the opportunity. I think everyone is sad that it goes, but it's sad that it's going, but I don't think it's Albany's fault. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So
Okay, so here's, I think, putting together what a lot of people said. What changes, if any, did you put into place during the pandemic, and do you plan on keeping any of those changes? I mean, that seems like it's something that's kind of past, present, and future that would be important. And that would, whether it's a restaurant or a movie theater or the YMCA or a nail salon or anything, I think something like that would be appropriate for most businesses. And it can be downsize, upsize, outdoors, inside, upstairs, working from home, whatever. It could be anything. And I think that that's something that would give us real information. And then I remember, would you like to be contacted? And Jennifer, member Hanson Romero brought up the point last month about multiple languages that are people's first languages. And I 100% agree with her because, yeah. So would you like to be contacted by city staff or a member of one of the business associations, and what support could you use? And that way people can say, oh, I want support with X, or, hey, I really need help because I can't navigate this process. I mean, I think that that's another open-ended thing that would help many mom and pop businesses, as Jennifer pointed out. So I think those are open-ended enough that they would really reach a broad spectrum of businesses.
Okay, member Hanson Romero.
You know, it just dawned on me. I remember why these questions were created as more of closed-ended questions. I just remembered this is it was actually collecting the data at the end. If you have the open-ended responses, the data collection, it's a little bit more difficult. So just want to keep that kind of in mind. I think that was Claire had mentioned that was going to be the issue if we put out a survey with too many open-ended questions. How do you, yeah.
It's a question of survey design. And the reason I ask questions like this is it's very quantifiable. You can get these graphs and you can see comparison, and you can't really do that when you have fill in the blank spots. It gets a lot more harder, not to collect, but to digest, really, to make sense of. I'm not saying it's not valuable, and I think there's a place for it. So that's just my perspective, having designed a few surveys in my day.
Right, but I guess at this point, it's like, do you want data, or do you want to really be able to help these businesses that have now had a really lousy 12 to 15 months? And I think at this point, I think that that's more of a goal than getting a bunch of numbers.
Sure.
I agree. I just wanted to bring that up as being one of the challenges. So, I
mean, it should be a mix. We're not just giving them a big box and say, tell us how you're doing. We're going to have a mix of quantifiable and more open-ended questions, so we can try to draw things out. The other thing that I really wanted to mention on this, more than the actual questions, was administering the survey. When we did the survey for the dog park, members of the subcommittee actually went down and talked to the dog owners, and we interviewed them. And I like the idea. I would be willing to take a couple hours and go door to door with a clipboard and a survey and actually talk to some people to get the responses, which is another opportunity to get some of that more less quantifiable information. So I want to think about that. But looking at the time, I think we need to finish these up. Brennan, do you think you can come up with a kind of a final draft that you can send around? Or do you need more direction from us?
I think it would be, I mean, I think it'd be nice to have more direction. We'll incorporate the notes and then present it at the next meeting to basically do final notes on that. But I think
Okay.
that it would be good to have everyone review it and talk about it before we decide it as a final draft.
All right, so we'll plan for next meeting to have basically a mock-up of the survey, and we can just draw. Okay, very good, very good. And you have enough for that, I think. Any other comments before we move on? Member Petrelli?
Yeah, just real quick. I think that having both the qualitative and the quantitative questions is most important here, and I think you should do a hybrid survey. And what was the other? Yeah, because also if it's all of these open-ended questions, the business owners probably will not respond as frequently. So I think that you do both. You could make one mandatory, the other one non-mandatory. Try to get as much data and information as possible. That's my 2 cents in the survey.
All right, great. No, I think that's great. All right, thank you. Member Carlton, are you raising your hand? You just hold the pen. Okay, just hold the pen. Very good. Okay. Moving on then. Next item. Now we come to the work plan. So I think now would be the time for the presentation. Member Petrilli?
Great. Let me do a screen share really quickly. Let's do this one so you guys can all see each other's faces. So this is the sort of the document that we were supposed to sort of dive deep into, and I think that we will be doing this. Probably we'll meet again over the next month and sort of dive into these sections. If we want to briefly review this, right? These are the goals, the bullet pointed goals of the economic development strategic plan, which was very well put together. And our goal was to look at these and sort of extrapolate that to this year and looking forward. What we did do is we went through and Council Member Green did a wonderful job of basically editing and updating this, and we wanted to propose this to the group and sort of have a quick discussion on these items. Is everyone following along? You guys have the view of the screen? We're good? Okay, cool. So we just jumped straight down. And the first thing that we did was we updated the dates to basically be like a 2-year window. Our goal was to try to be as productive as, or just to set tangible goals and realistic expectations so that we can all be on the same page and get some work done together, right? Because I think that with the overlap, a lot of us are new, and we want to be as successful as possible. So I don't have what this was before. Maybe someone could pull up the previous plan just for reference. We basically wrote over it and added some notes. So the first one was basically like assess and advise on a local farmers market. So what we did was we wanted to collect the existing data on farmers market and craft a proposal for implementing a farmers market. So sort of making this just a little bit more tangible. And one of our ideas was to get together a subcommittee that could collect information from Claire and from Jeff to come up with something. Let me just move through this. Maybe we can touch back on that unless anybody has any comment or any suggestion there, or if we want to just jump in and create a subcommittee really quickly. I'll take some advice from the chair. Member Abbott, what do you think? Move on, keep reviewing.
I think a quick review. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so then we the next point was review existing proposals and assess potential relaunch of the revitalization Complete Street project, which was a project that member Hanson Romero was hip to, and this was about signage and landscaping and sort of following up on what seemed to have been a lost project, specifically with the intention to increase signage from Buchanan / Marin directing traffic over to our commercial district, which is the Solano, San Pablo sort of area. Any comment? I feel like there's a comment from, go for it. Sorry.
Just complete streets isn't, I guess, really the proper terminology, because complete streets is when you improve a street or an avenue to account for every type of user. So I don't know, what is it, a signage or wayfinding and signage branding project or something like that, but it's not complete streets.
Understood.
Some other term, yeah.
This was an existing project that was done several years ago, to my knowledge, right? Ms. Hanson Romero, do you want to do comment on that?
So there was a project that they had brought in consultants and spent quite a bit of time gathering feedback in order to revitalize parts of Solano Avenue. I basically put it in here because I kind of wanted to see where things were left and if there was anything tangible of this project that could be still developed and done. I know City of Berkeley has got some funding to work with the City of Albany on it as well. So that was my intent on bringing it back up.
Yeah, I guess.
I would just, the plan was completed, so I don't know if there's any work for us there. It may be revitalized, but if that happens, it's going to be coming from council and not from us. So that revisited. So I think that we have the signage piece later, and that might be, we could ask for a report, but again, that wouldn't necessarily be a work plan item, I would say.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. Let's just confirm that the project was completed and then maybe remove it from our agenda and maybe think about potential signage or adding something at a later date that would be tangible, that would, you know, be in the same sort of vein. We suggested that we update marketing and outreach materials, including a marketing brochure and promotional videos, given the post-COVID reality. Any questions on that one? That's basically just an update and refresh. Then we added this, explore the use of data analytics and marketing consultants, e.g. I guess Buxton, to use consumer intelligence technology to attract new businesses, right? This was, the intention here was to gather information and also to get a presentation so that we can potentially advise the city or the chamber to, you know, that this is a worthwhile endeavor to really understand, you know, what business growth we can have and where to target our efforts and so on and so forth. I think this is especially related to the San Pablo Corridor project and maybe getting this on a timeline for a presentation to us, then we could present to whoever needs to be presented to. Do you want to comment on that, Ms. Hanson Romero?
Yeah, so I know Todd has seen this presentation as well as Alan Kane with the SAA. So she has sent us some information and is happy to present when we have a meeting where it's possible to do so.
I think rather what I would do here, this would include both the one above and this one. It would be develop a business recruitment and retention plan or program and implement. That's the key. We have lots of plans we need to implement, and that would involve, I think, I would push pretty hard to try to get a contract with the Buxton company, which isn't a presentation, it's a tool that gives you very fine-grained data that would answer a question that has come up many times in this meeting, which was what businesses will be successful, what businesses will be attracted to the area, and if we're trying to build and attract business, how can we build to attract business? So what business to attract? So I think that's something I would say is develop and implement a business recruitment and retention plan is what I would say. And that would include both of them. And the marketing and outreach materials is part of that, is what I would say.
Great. Thank you for that comment. Maybe we can circle, I think that we'll probably circle back on this and then repropose it again. I think maybe in in a follow-up meeting.
Well,
Retention.
I would just make a point that I don't think this needs to fall completely on you. Staff is taking notes and is going to be developing a draft of the work plan from our comments. This is our next agenda item that you're talking about right now, so our current agenda item. So very much appreciate, but I don't want you to feel like you have to edit this to final form right now. Just continue, and it's a great way to lead this discussion. Yeah.
So the next item was the existing was assist in developing and analyzing results of the supplementary. So we added the supplementary survey to evaluate efforts related to business recovery post-COVID and business attractions, retention, permit customers, service issues, and discover new ideas for supporting local business growth. Right. So we already addressed this previously in the last agenda item. So I'll move right along. Continue to provide ongoing input on potential business uses for vacant properties and new developments. No change there, although I think that we could get a little bit more concrete with what we are doing, right? Understanding what the vacancies are and advising as needed. Then we did encourage appropriate use of art funds in the business district, who, what, why, where, to suggest funds, to suggest how and where funds are being appropriated. Because basically, previously it said like encourage the use of art, publicly, and I think that we can get a little bit more concrete with what we're supposed to be doing. So again, this is it's sort of open-ended, but I think that we should, as a group, determine what is our relationship to art within the community and how can we influence it in the most positive way and tangible way. So any comments or suggestions there, especially from, or even how we even change this wording here in order to be a little bit more proactive?
Well, I think we had also talked about, and I do know that this was like a subcommittee from the prior economic development committee was, there was a subcommittee that also was trying to connect with the arts committee as well. I think we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the next point, which was to sort of initiate some sort of collaboration between the city's different committees. I believe that there's 8 of them. But as the sort of the economic development committee, I think that we can take a proactive role in understanding who, what, where, and why these other subcommittees are functioning and how potentially those can incorporate into what we're doing here. Thoughts on that? Yes.
Yeah, so I actually thought the original language was stronger and more direct. Just encourage the installation of art in the business district. That involves lots of different things, and you got to work with the art committee to do it. And maybe haven't been as successful as we could and should be. And I'm not faulting the previous art subcommittee, but in any event, it's a good thing to do. And I think that it's not complicated or even controversial. We have almost no art installations in Albany. It's a city devoid of art. If you have visited any city in Europe, even the smallest town has more art than Albany does. So I think it would be a very simple thing to do, at least to stoke that up. As to art funds and so on, there might be fights and jealousies over who gets what funds, but we're just talking about getting art in the business community.
Yeah, I just don't know what encourage means,
Yeah, you meet with them and you establish locations and you identify pieces and you get them installed.
So I think one of the things that we talked about in the subcommittee was not focusing so much on the installation of art, but on other uses for the funds rather than just throwing it towards a sculpture or a mural, which are both valuable things. But there could be other things than installations of art that encompass encouraging art in our community. And what that might be, I don't know. Like, that's the point of this, is to explore ways other than simply installing art that we could enhance art in our community. So that's where we were going with that.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. I just think that it gets away from the very specific concrete idea that we are devoid of art, and it would be a good thing for our business strips to have more art in public places, public art. And so working with, and if you start to do this and you let it be known that there's support, institutional support for artists will come out of the woodwork to do it.
What I'm hearing is the original language, continue to encourage art in commercial areas, is very broad. So I'm hearing, on one hand, I'm hearing a desire to make it more concrete, more tangible. If that's what we want to do, then I say we suggest develop and implement an art in vacant building or vacant commercial space program. Maybe that's what we want to do. Encourage a mural in commercial. I don't know what, but I think we could come up with some specific ideas, or I think we leave it as fairly broad, and then that allows us to develop that as we go on.
I think we were actually dropping the vacant property or art and vacant property idea.
Well, I mean, that's we can do that, but that's we need the we need the work plan item, continue to encourage art in commercial areas, or be more specific. Yeah.
I would also say that I think that this is good to continue for this committee to continue the use of art and expand where we can, or get somewhere we can. But I also think that we need to partner closely with the arts committee, because I think they've probably been down these roads of the reasons why we do or don't have specific art. They've gone down the road to know what works and what doesn't work, and the pitfalls that they ran into.
Yeah, there's lots of challenges. So I like leaving it broad because I like the idea of bringing funds in, mentioning that, because I think that is something that would be required. But I don't want to tie it down too much. I mean, it could be an art in commercial areas program, or art in commercial areas, develop an art in commercial areas program, which is kind of going to get to the questions that you're getting.
So, I mean, part of my ignorance, when was the last thing that, what was the last project that was completed that the Economic Development Committee participated in or influenced that's related to art?
I don't think any of it was ever completed. I think that's the problem.
They've learned a lot about how difficult it is what's happened. Yeah,
I mean,
so that's why I think stepping back and coming up with things we can complete is the step to take.
An easy one would be to get a few murals put in. That has not been done. I identified one client of mine that has a wall that she'd be okay with having a mural. Somehow it didn't move forward.
And I heard from the Arts Committee representative who's been working on that, talking about how incredibly difficult it is. You get building owner issues, you get insurance issues, you get a liability. It's a headache. So it's a lot more complicated than we realize. So that's why I like the idea of developing a program so that we can have these questions answered before we go out and start talking to people about putting paint on their walls.
I mean, maybe
if I may add, oh, okay.
Sorry.
I was just.
Go ahead, Isabel.
Okay, I was just going to say the Arts Committee is very entrenched in everything that you're talking about right now. And as Chair Abbott said, it's just very complicated. Staff is assisting also with contractual agreements, and it's moving but slowly. So my recommendation is probably to keep it broad, but do indicate a collaboration with the Arts Committee for specific locations, in the commercial district. But anything else, you're just going to get bogged down in the details that the Arts Committee is already tackling. And if you're interested at all in hearing about the Art in Public Places Ordinance, I would suggest that you check out on YouTube the last Arts Committee meeting. Anne Hirsch, the senior planning manager for the city, provided a really great overview of how the art ordinance works and how the funding can be applied to public art.
Do we want to add an art question to our survey? Would that be something that would be relevant, given that, you know, surveying the business owners? Would you like to participate? I don't know.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I'm not sure the survey is the best way to do that. I think that a lot of the people who answered, I mean, we had, you know, a lot of them were working out of their home. You know, it's only a percentage that were retail business on the street or business on the street. Well, Solana Avenue was the biggest responder.
I think that the language of encourage the use of art in commercial spaces is great. I think that we should expand upon that by developing a program and really understanding what our role is, and also developing a partnership with the Arts Committee. I think that's
yeah. So maybe what we need to do is encourage the Arts Committee to develop a program for art in commercial space. That might be the answer, and we can encourage that and support it. I'm sorry, Member Smollett.
No, I was just, as Member Chasty said, wherever you go, you see public art and murals. Like if I ride my bike from Oakland to home, no matter which way I go, which route I take, there's all this public art. There's murals on the sides of buildings and everything. So if it's so difficult in Albany, it's kind of hard to understand why. There must be a reason, and maybe Isabel can address. I mean, has Albany, has the Arts Committee talked to Oakland or Richmond or other places that just have gluts of beautiful public art everywhere you look?
So we're kind of getting away from a work plan discussion
Right.
and into
But
a
I mean,
tone arts discussion.
really
So let's kind of table that. But I suggest you watch, review the Arts Committee meeting that Isabel was just mentioning, where they go over, and Hirsch goes over this stuff. I'm going to vote for something like continue work with the Arts Committee to encourage public art in the commercial district, commercial areas.
I'm good with that.
Very good. You know, we've kind of gotten off the rails here, so let me open it up for public comment real quick, and we can come back and get to the last few items here.
Sounds good.
Nick Pilch.
Yes. Hi. Thanks. Me again. So, yeah. By the way, I want to thank Member Chasty for calling me out previously. This way of doing the public meetings lacks a little bit when the members of the public are absolutely completely anonymous to everyone else in the meeting, except for you on the panel. It's a little strange. I sent an email to the city council about that. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, you know, some of the best art stuff has come up as just a grassroots effort, like the Ohlone Greenway. All the stuff that came up around the Black Lives Matter or the, just diversity. I was riding on the Greenway and I just noticed all that. That's wonderful stuff. And I just hope that we can find ways of lowering barriers to bringing art, because I do agree with those who say we need more art in Albany. And we certainly have a huge base of artists to draw from. Just speaking of art musicianship, we just had Coachella this past weekend. Just an amazing, Albany has just an amazing number of people to draw from for that. So I hope we can find easy ways to get art out in the public spaces. And I think it's a great idea, by the way, to add the art question to a survey. Just something like, do you want art? Have you thought of having art, but you don't know how to do it? Something like that. And also, speaking of the survey, I think that having both the qualitative and quantitative, as people have said, is a good idea. And I don't think you have to be too scared about the qualitative stuff, because these days it's all done electronically. You just get a printout of all the comments and you read through all the comments. And so it doesn't go into a nice graph, but you get all the good comments. And then finally, about the complete streets, I think what the member was thinking of is that when we did the Solano Complete Streets Plan, it also included a bunch of placemaking stuff, which is not part of Complete Streets, which is technically transportation. but that was kind of thrown into the mix. So you might want to consider a different wording for that. That's technically not complete streets, but maybe placemaking would be or some other term would be good there. And thanks for letting me speak.
All right, thank you. Yeah, you know, I forgot that the public doesn't see the names of the speakers, so I'll try to keep that in mind. Thank you. Shall we continue? I see. What are we doing on time? We need to finish up here. Let's see. You want to continue, Member Pacheco?
Yes, I'd love to. So there's 3 more items here. One was collaborate with other city committees and local business groups. This was research into and consult with neighboring cities about strategic strategies for economic development, right? So how can we be the most effective economic development committee possible? One of the ways is to know what that looks like. The person who was just speaking, I think Nick brought up 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago, if not last month, you know, that just knowing what is possible is going to be powerful for us. So I think that is something that we should add to this plan. Advise and consult on possible zoning changes, business opportunities, and city requirements along San Pablo Avenue corridor. Right, this is touching on what we started with the presentation from Jeff Bonds, and just continuing that work and supporting that process as much as possible. That is sort of what we came up with. Again, down below, just to touch on what the economic development sort of the big pamphlet produced was: partner with businesses, improve City Hall's proactive economic development efforts, target retail, restaurant for business attraction, which we're still touching on above, get more infill development, upgrade built environments, improve customer service and permit process. So I don't know if you want to tie that all together, Member Abbott, or comment or send us back to review to do it one more time. And then also, if any, like, you know, we can clean this up and send this via email to anybody who might need it. And this is we're more than happy to sort of share this to the group, and people can comment, especially the members can contribute as needed.
We may be happy to, but we're not going to do that. You can send it to staff and they can share it and make it a public document. All right.
I just saw staff like looking, like reading, like we can send.
They're sitting there, they're like, oh no, don't say that.
Yeah. Okay.
Member Carlton.
I had a comment on the third from the last comment, the collaborate with other city committees and local business groups. That's very wide open. Was there a specific goal to do that, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, the goal was what we sort of talked about with the art committee, right? Is that there's all of these separate committees, the environmental impact. I mean, there's one related to social justice. There's another one related to the environment. I like understanding who and what is out there and how we can contribute as the economic development committee, I think is a powerful thing, especially related to the arts or, you know, sustainability efforts or any, I mean, you name it. I think across the board, and I don't think all of us are going to be attending all of these, you know, these other committee meetings as well, right? I can't expect that we're all going to attend, you know, 8 2-hour meetings, but being informed and knowing what their agendas are, I think is really important. And maybe have one of their representatives present in our meetings and vice versa, and sort of share this sort of discussion of, you know, what is your initiative? What are the initiatives of the Economic Development Committee? What are the initiatives of the Art Committee? So that's where that thought is sort of connecting the dots between all of the city's sub committees and even subcommittees, you know. So that was the thought. And I think that we should make this, you know, we should make it more concrete.
Yeah, I don't disagree with it, but I'm just trying to think, like, how do you quantify it? How do you know when you reached it? You know, if it's a task or a goal, then how do we know we've achieved it when it's kind of wide open like that? So maybe we just need to wordsmith it.
Yeah. Maybe, and this isn't much better, but look for opportunities to collaborate with other city committees. So we're not just kind of going and saying, hi, what do you do? But we're coming and saying, hey, we've had this idea, or we have this question. Maybe you can help us with this question. But that's kind of what, you know, staff and the council do. They kind of meld everything together. So, well, I'm not sure. I really like the next one, doing research on we're a new committee for the city. We don't have a lot to go on. I like the idea of doing some research and coming up with some more concrete guidelines for what we should be doing or best practices. I also really like the idea of engaging, as Nick Tilch was saying earlier, with the Cal ED and the East Bay ED and EDC, I guess, and having somebody who stays up to date on that and perhaps presents, periodically. Engage with regional economic development organizations.
Can I say something?
Of course, at this point it's an open discussion. Jump in.
So this is the first committee I've ever been on in Albany, and one thing that it seems to me, and I don't know if this is, I'm just going to tell you what it seems to me. So like when we get appointed to committees, if there's an understanding, at least on this committee, that that maybe we act as liaisons to other committees, or because the problem with all this vagueness, which I get is necessary for us to say, oh, we've accomplished that or not, is it's so vague. So, like if we had, if one person from our committee volunteered to go to the arts committee meetings, that's only 2 more hours a month. It's not that much more a month. And then not necessarily like spend each of our meetings listening to each other's reports, because what's the point of that? But it means that somebody on our committee is better informed than, can contribute. And I know that part of that is staff's job, but staff brings a different perspective to things than the committee members do. I don't know if I'm making sense, but same with this in, like your idea to engage with the regional EDC or whatever it's called, Cal Ed, and which is a great idea. And we can all say it's a great idea, but someone actually needs to go do it. And instead of like being vague or making you the chair or, the staff do it, if, somehow we foster an environment where I say I'll do it, or, another member says they'll do it. And this goes way beyond the topic of discussion, and now I'm running us into like way into dinner time, but I just wanted to put that out there because we're setting all these goals and it requires work. Like, we can't just all confine our commitment to 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of agree. I think that you guys have put your fingers on some really important, valuable things. I'm having a hard time kind of focusing them onto specific work plan items that are well enough defined that we can check them off at some point.
Right.
And as opposed to something we just kind of want to agree amongst ourselves, oh, you're going to go to this meeting and if anything comes up, you'll let us know, sort of thing.
Yeah. And that's what I meant about fostering an environment in which, we do like say, okay, this, I'm really interested in X, so that's all. Yeah,
and the other thing, I'm sorry, Member Chase, one more quick question. I just want us to keep in mind that one of our biggest items is the, I'm sorry, Member Chasey, go ahead. Forget I was.
No, go ahead, Todd, go.
No, I was thinking of the wrong committee. It's embarrassing, please.
Oh, well, it's a senior moment then. There are probably 50 different avenues of tasks that are coming off this list. And maybe what Member Green is talking about, what bothered her was what specific things are going to be done. And usually what a committee like this will do is we'll prioritize and we'll say, okay, we have 50 things we want to do, and we have the resources at the moment to do 5 or 10 at a time, and we'll prioritize. And so these are the ones we're going to do. And if I don't want to beat this horse because we've already been over it, but in terms of concrete, everybody knows when we've got an installation of art Everybody knows when we've landed a big business that we wanted to get onto Solano, and everybody knows when we've saved a business that was thinking about leaving. Those are concrete things that we can and should be doing and focusing on. If we can get an area that, I'll give you an example. The work that was done to clean up that little corner where Art Thou is across from Safeway, it was just a wreck of a corner, just 3 useless storefronts that just weren't doing anything. And cleaning that up changed the whole street. So there are very concrete things we can do. The Blue Glove Parade, I hate to say it, but is another good example of where the Solano Avenue Association collaborated with others to build something that makes a huge impact. And so there are some specific things we could do that will actually make an impact. And I just suggest we go over and set priorities.
If I could, oh, go ahead. Chair Abbott, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
One thing I did want to mention is that staff does have, we have a draft of the work plan with basically, we kind of did a similar thing to what Michael did, where we have the policy review and initiatives. And so we have some additional things that were just based on what was mentioned in the previous meeting. So without taking too much of your time, if you want to, for moving forward, if Michael wants to provide me with what he kind of, based on what he wants to provide, I'll incorporate the notes also in this discussion and also incorporate what we have in this draft of the work plan that was shared for this meeting. And then to go back to what member JC said is we would like you to kind of order it in terms of priority. So for the next meeting, we'll have kind of a long list and then kind of decide which ones you want to take off, which ones you want to revise, and then which ones you want to move up to the top of the list.
I promise to do better at managing this process next month. I'm sorry, I'm still trying to figure this out myself. That sounds great.
Can I ask for the telephone number of the chair of the art committee? I'll call and see if I can get a mural installed on this wall. Somebody got that person's name and phone number?
I'm sure someone does. We could check with the staff liaison for the arts committee, I would assume.
Well, if whoever it is could get me that phone number, I'll make that call and see if I can make that happen. I know the owner of the building, I know the business, and the permission has already been given to me. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
All we need is the muralist.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so that's the plan for the next. That's what we're gonna finish this item right now. Is that what we're doing? Okay. Thank you so much to the subcommittee. It wasn't exactly what you were tasked with, but it was valuable in the end, and we appreciate it. Thank you. Very good. So next item is future agenda items. The item that I wanted to mention is I would like to bring up the farmers market, and that will allow us to get kind of a subcommittee going. And I've been in touch with the folks on the previous subcommittee, and they would be very interested in kind of bringing everybody up to speed on where they left that. And Member Smolin?
Yeah, I know you mentioned it in my stead last month, but I still want to say that the opportunity for economic development of cannabis that we're completely missing in our town, and that can go along with so many of the policy initiatives that are in. Hey, right? Exactly. Oh, sorry, cannabis. Shh. But I think that Jeff Bond said that he would give a presentation about the history and moving forward. And I think I would like to have that sooner rather than later, please.
Yes, that is on his agenda, and that's something that we will have in the near future.
Thanks.
Any other items for the agenda? Member Hanson-Romero?
I'm just going to say I'd like to try to, and I don't know if this is possible to do it, but bringing up the Buxton and taking a look at that for the next, as a next item agenda for us.
We'll see if there's a way we can fit it into our current actions. We'll see. Maybe we can do that. Yeah, no, I definitely want that to happen. It may not be next month. That's what I'm, yeah. It's a slow process. I'm sorry. It's just all.
So
Oftentimes-
frustrating.
Often it's very frustrating. All right. I was going to initiate a new thing kind of at the end of meetings where we kind of go over commitments we've made, but I'm not sure any of us have really made any commitments other than Member Petrilli sending the document to Brennan and things like that. So I think we can skip that this time. Were there any other agenda items that came up during discussion that staff recorded?
Well, one thing that we kind of held off on was the outreach we had the brochure for business retention. So that was something that was mentioned again, and it might be good to revisit that in the near future.
Okay. Right. Member Hanson-Romero?
Sorry, yeah, and with regards to that, I was handed something the other day. Alan had picked up from El Cerrito, and it's really a neat, like map and kind of a visitor's brochure kind of thing. Now that's more on the visitor side. I think the brochure that we were talking about was more of a welcome brochure for businesses and stuff. But I think Buxton kind of layers in that element as well. So.
Okay, and we can talk about that when it's an agenda item. So I think we have what we're going to have. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, wait.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention also that I noted the survey. We would bring back the survey questions, the work plan, and there's also a strategic plan review by the subcommittee for potentially the next meeting.
Very good. Yeah, so we're gonna
have to
only be able to do maybe one thing. Yeah, one of these additional things or something. Yeah, and I'm anticipating the farmers item to be pretty quick, just basically saying, yeah, let's do this, because it's already on our work plan, the existing work plan item, and go forward. So that one would be pretty small. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good month. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you on the Blue Glove crew, Todd. Crew.
Yeah, crew.
Yeah.
It's not a parade.
Crew,
it's a
not
crew.
parade. We're not a parade.
I think you look like a parade. I love it.
Night.